Roll Tide, everybody, and we are live on a Sunday, and we're going to talk Alabama football. Got a lot of things to get into, so let's get this thing started. I see some of you guys are already lined up in the comment section, and we appreciate all of you guys for being here. Brought to you by Pearl River Resort. It's time for Cover Crimson. Let's get this thing started. All right, there he is, Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. I'm going to tell you right now, Clint, the elephant in the room. What's that? It's from a very bad shaving, Nick.
You must have got it good.
It wouldn't stop bleeding. I mean, it bled for a good 10, probably an hour, and I finally got it to stop. So
yeah, we
survived.
That's why we were late. Mick was trying to. I respect the fact that you've hopped on here with the nose plug because yeah, that's commitment, man. People can't question.
It's deep.
People can't question if you're willing to play through injury.
Well, great to see all you guys. And Roll Tide to you. May the fourth be with you. Your favorite Star Wars character, Clint?
I was a huge Qui-Gon Jinn fan.
Really?
Yeah, he was kind of like he was the Ned Stark before the Ned Stark. You know, for any Game of Thrones fans out there, where it's like died way too soon. Now, granted, see, I wouldn't. Like, my parents aren't into Star Wars, so I didn't get exposure to the old Star Wars movies until the new ones were out. And I say new ones is in like episodes 1, 2, and 3. So I kind of got to experience all that in real time, and I actually watched the episode 1. That's like the first Star Wars movie I ever watched. And so Qui-Gon Jinn dying, you know, I thought he was going to be a much bigger part of that universe. So it was the Ned Stark before the Ned Stark. What about you, man? You got one?
Yeah, Han Solo all the way. When I was a kid, I had to be Han Solo. Always kind of felt like I was a Han Solo type character. I still love them. And then, like at the baseball game last night, they had Star Wars night, and I saw like a guy all dressed up like Han Solo. I was like, that'd be cool, maybe for Halloween one year. But yeah, love the movies. I like the old ones better. But when I was a kid, it was the originals, and then the new ones came out, and I like those, and then. You know, some of them are better than others now, but the series with the Mandalorian's been great. I watched those. So. Hope all you guys enjoy our Star Wars talk. All right, let's get into the Sunday mailbag questions, and I know you love these, Clint. It's one of your favorite things. Going into that mailbag.
Yeah, I love when the audience, the listeners, kind of steer the conversation. So we do have 3 mailbag questions. If you have any more, might be able to get to them depending on how long we spend on some of this stuff, but we'll go ahead and just dive right in. Justin Paul Sports, he asked, who can get in Alabama's way for an SEC championship game appearance? This is a team with many returning starters, Coach Grubb, and a QB with 1 year in DeBoer system. No spring portal entries. SEC championship seems likely, right? Mick, kind of what are your thoughts, brother?
Well, I think that's what he needs to be shooting for, because at Alabama, we shoot for championships. So much of it's going to depend on the offensive line and the quarterback play. I think they'll have some patience with Ty, but if he struggles, then I could see them, allowing Mack to come in. If both guys struggle, I could see Russell getting a chance if it was a really bad year. But what you hope is that Ty just takes the ball and runs with it, and I think if that happens, it's a really tough schedule. But there's most of those teams Alabama should be able to beat if they're focused. So I think that the 2 teams that probably all you guys are thinking I'll agree with that are going to be tough to beat are Texas, because of the money they're going to spend. They're going to have a good roster. And then Georgia, but I wouldn't count out. Ole Miss either. I mean, like Lane Kiffin's kind of been building up a pretty good program over there, and I look at their schedule. There's a lot of winnable games on it. I think that's part of it too. So that's where I'm at right now. What about you?
So what I think of when I see the question, who stands in their way of an SEC championship game appearance? It's like, okay, like they're not playing Texas. So, I mean, I guess it is. I mean, obviously you don't have East and West anymore. It's going to be top two. So even the teams that you aren't playing, it's like, who's going to be standing in your way of being in one of those top two spots? Mm-hmm. But I'm more so was kind of looking at Alabama's schedule because there's going to be certain teams that if Alabama loses to them and they finish with a better record or with the same record, then they would go over Alabama. So that was more so my focus. So Texas obviously is up there. I think they're the favorite to win the SEC this year. But I'm more so focused on some of these other teams. So obviously Florida State would not count towards the SEC championship at all. So that's not really one that we're considering. Even though, I think Alabama's going to win that game, but going to Tallahassee, you really don't know what Florida State's going to be. Even though I've heard Castellanos has not had a great start to the spring, throwing a lot of interceptions in Gus Malzahn's offense. That's beside the point, though. Getting off topic. To me, the number one is Georgia. But here's the thing. Georgia, they have to play out of the six favorites. There are the top six odds to win the SEC this season. Georgia's one of them. But of the other five, Georgia has to play four of them. Now, granted, the good part about that is three of the four are at home, with Texas coming to Athens, Alabama, and Tennessee. And Tennessee, I don't even know if I really count them anymore.
Right.
I still think they're going to be a good team, but they're a lot more uncertain now with the quarterback issue. You got to go to Ole Miss. They obviously whipped up on Georgia pretty good last year. So I would think the revenge factor, the fact that we think Ole Miss might take a little bit of a step back, that's going to be one to keep an eye on. But they play at Tennessee, and then they get a bye week before they have to play Alabama. They do have back-to-back games against Auburn, which is going to be on the road, and then Ole Miss. That's going to be one to kind of maybe take a look at. If they end up, it depends on what Auburn ends up doing. But I could see Georgia, based off of where their roster's at and breaking in a new quarterback. Trevor Etienne's gone. You do have Nate Frazier, who's going to be one of the better running backs in the SEC, or at least we think that he's going to. Two, good tight ends returning from last season. Offensive line loses over 3,000 snaps, 4 starters from last year. Now, granted, there were some part-time starters, kind of a couple of their versions of like Wilk and Formby. But they lost Jared Wilson, their center, Dylan Fairchild, Tate Ratledge, and Xavier Truss. Three of those 4 guys were drafted on day 2 of the NFL draft, with Tate Ratledge being a second-round pick, Jared Wilson being a third-round pick, and then Dylan Fairchild also going in the 3rd round as well. A lot to replace on the offensive line. Now, they're kind of similar to Alabama, where they have some bodies, some guys that you look at and say, okay, this guy got his feet wet. I would fully expect him to step in and do at least fairly well, but there's some uncertainty there. Defensively, you lose some talent in your front 7, still got some talent, but their pass rush is a major question mark. Got some playmakers in the secondary, but it's like, Georgia's one of those that I'll be keeping a close eye on, because I've said, and I'm sure everybody has heard me say it, but I think Georgia can take a little bit of a step back this year. Even though they already took one step back last year, wouldn't be shocked if they continued moving in that direction. But, we'll kind of have to wait and see. You're already getting comments about the nose piercing.
Yeah. Look, it was a shaving accident. It's not a piercing, guys.
Should we? No. I'll tell you what we should probably do is get a banner going, and then just anytime someone comments that, just pull up the banner as we're talking, where they can know it's not a nose ring.
It wouldn't stop bleeding.
Hey, you must have nicked yourself good.
It was one of the worst I've ever done.
I don't know, Mick. What do you think about Georgia? Are you concerned? I mean, Alabama's got to go to Athens. Wow. Even if they lose that game, that doesn't mean Georgia's going to the SEC championship over Alabama, but it puts Georgia kind of in the driver's seat, where Alabama would have to do some things, because it's not just about getting an even record, it's having a better SEC record at that point if they got the head-to-head. What do you think about Georgia?
I mean, I think they'll be good. They're consistently good. I don't look at anybody, even Texas, as invincible. This isn't the Nick Saban Alabama years where you just knew you were just going to roll out a team that was going to beat up on everybody, and they may lose a game. Everyone's beatable, and that includes everyone. Texas and Georgia and Alabama. Alabama should have made the SEC championship last year. It was a shame that they didn't. I mean, they have themselves to blame for that, because they took care of business against the teams they were supposed to take care of business up until Oklahoma. And then I guess they thought they were already in there and got complacent and they didn't make it, But they lost to Oklahoma. It was a terrible team last year. But that's what happened around the entire conference. Team, upsets happened all the time. Texas plays a weak schedule, so I'll put them in there. Georgia's got all their tough games at home. They're gonna be hard to beat. But so I guess if you kind of look at it, those would be the two teams again that you'd worry about. But Alabama's beaten Georgia 9 out of 10 times, and that may change this year. But of all the hype and all the talk about how good Georgia is and what they are and what they're all about and all that stuff, Alabama kicks their ass. 9 out of 10 is ass kicking. It's not like, hey, you know what? With 7, I mean, I don't feel like Bama beats Auburn's ass, and they beat them 5 straight. I think they've been tough games, and Bama's put some bludgeonings on Georgia in that SEC championship game, in Tuscaloosa, and they could have beat them last year by 60 if they would have played the second half. But turned into a great game. But I don't know. I mean, until Georgia starts really beating Alabama, they're just not the team I'm that worried about. I mean, I think they're good and a lot of respect for them, but when you beat anybody 9 out of 10, that's 9 out of 10. That's one game. Then the one game they won, like everybody got hurt. We didn't have anybody to throw the ball to. Like it couldn't have fallen better for them.
Yeah. Granted, it's one of those things where we always talk about past and kind of, where things are trending. That does matter from a psychological standpoint. And it also matters sometimes. It's like with Nick Saban, the way that he had built Alabama's teams versus the way that Kirby had built Georgia, Alabama matched up pretty well against it. And then, if you're doing what Alabama was doing offensively in the first half of last year's game, doesn't matter really what your system is. If it's working like that, you're scoring a lot of points. They were doing some things to frustrate Carson Beck. It was in Tuscaloosa, hostile environment. I think he got rattled early, but it's like once they settled down, second half, much more of the game we were expecting, the back and forth battle. Going to Athens, it's now, it's potentially going to be somebody's 4th career start. It doesn't matter which quarterback it is. None of them have ever started a game. Now, I guess it's either going to be at most 4. It could be fewer. Obviously, if you make a switch or something, it could be less. But I mean, Florida State, Louisiana Monroe, and then Wisconsin. I mean, a couple of Power 4 opponents in there where you maybe can really get battle tested, including a game in Tallahassee. But man, I don't know. Georgia's going to be super motivated for that game. I think a lot of what they got to work out kinks-wise, they can do over those first couple of weeks. Like you pull up their schedule, Marshall, Austin Peay, and then they go to Tennessee. Like I said, that'll be a tough test, but that's more manageable if, Tennessee's still figuring some things out at the quarterback position. It's going to be a hostile environment, but they lost some defensive pieces, still got some. But it's like even if they lose that game, then you get a couple of weeks off before you got to play Alabama. And you get them at home. So that's the main one that I would say is standing in Alabama's way. I also want to mention LSU, even though I think their schedule is extremely difficult. They have to replace a ton on the offensive line. Will Campbell's gone, Emory Jones, Miles Frazier, Garrett Dellinger. They have to replace, I think, 4 out of their 5 starters. And it's a really tough schedule. So I don't know what that ends up looking like. And Alabama gets them at home. Oklahoma's one. It's like I could see them taking a big step forward. Brent Venables' defense, you expect it to be good. They've addressed the offense in a lot of ways at quarterback with John Mateer and Jaden Knott, the running back, one of the better running backs in the transfer portal. Offensive line still a question mark, but they got to come to Tuscaloosa. So I don't know. I would probably say Alabama and LSU and Oklahoma, they're a distant second. Also, where would you put Auburn on this? Like, do you think it's possible? Some people, and we do this, it feels like some people are doing this every year with Auburn. Do you really think that it's possible that they could take a big enough step forward this season where they're competing for an SEC championship, where that Iron Bowl at the end of the season actually really does matter as far as which team's going to be advancing?
Yeah, I mean, they were close last year. They had a lot of close losses last year, and I think they could be a team that could be tough to beat. Yeah, Mike G, I hope they do collapse. Look, if they do, if the wheels come off this year, it's big trouble for them down the road, you know. But I mean, I'm just being honest. I could see them being competitive. They were close. Their quarterback threw a lot of interceptions. You know, they could have won a lot more games than they did. It was nice that we didn't have to worry about them. I mean, we just bullied those guys up and down the field, which I thought was fantastic. But it's at their ballpark. It's always tough when we play there. But the rest of their schedule, you know, it's Auburn. I mean, it's like they have this thing called Auburn Jesus. I don't know if you know about this, Clint, but
yeah,
they get some of the weirdest, luckiest bullcrap breaks, and I would not be surprised if it doesn't come back for them. But it could go both ways. I mean, let's be honest. If they start out bad like they did last year, they take one, they lose to Vanderbilt or something, and all of a sudden, you know, I don't know what their schedule is. I mean, I guess I could pull it up, but they're definitely a wild card for me. You know, when you think about it, because they should be good, right? Like they've kind of put all of their resources into being good now, right? Instead of being good right away. Like they've got a new quarterback. You know, what's that guy going to look like? What you know, Hugh Freeze is a good coach too. I mean, let's just go ahead and say it. I mean, he is, right? So they're at Baylor. They got at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M, Georgia, Missouri, at Arkansas, Kentucky, Vandy, Mercer, and they play a pretty weak schedule. I mean, you know, like how many of these games on here they're gonna play Baylor at the beginning of the year. That's at Baylor. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe they win, maybe they lose, right? But they'll beat Ball State. They'll beat South Alabama. At Oklahoma. Oklahoma's supposed to be a lot better, but you know who knows what that looks like. They'll probably lose at Texas A&M. The home against Georgia, they'll probably lose that one. But then Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vandy, those are all wins. Mercer. So I mean, they should have a pretty good, you know. I mean, like I got them at 7 or 8 wins, and that's what if they upset Georgia? You know, what if they win at Texas A&M? You know, what if they? So I mean. It's not like we look at some of these schedules and you're going, okay, you're going to lose that one. 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 I think that there's probably like 4 swing games on there. And there's just years where they win those games. So they could be competitive.
You know, looking at Auburn's schedule, 3 of their first 6 games are on the road, 3 of their first 5 really. And then you stack a home game against Georgia on top of that. So the first 6 games, 3 on the road and against Georgia. I mean, you got to beat Baylor. If they don't beat Baylor, I think that sets the tone for everything with their season. But, you know, going to Norman, going to College Station, both very losable games. And you got Georgia. I mean, it's possible that Auburn starts out 3-3, 2-4, even potentially. I don't really see that happening. I think 3-3 is more realistic, maybe 4-2 if they can pull off an upset. But then you're right, Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mercer, they could go on a little bit of a run there, depending on what happens. But I think I'm going to change my answer though, Mick, and I'm going to say Alabama's biggest obstacle is Alabama, because you know last year Alabama's biggest obstacle ended up being Alabama. I mean, you lose a game that you're not supposed to against Vanderbilt. It's like, okay, tough lesson to learn, but hopefully lesson was learned. It was not. Then you go to Norman, you pull the same stunt, actually look worse in some ways. And then, you know, you kind of screw yourself out of an SEC championship appearance last year. So, I mean, and I think that Peasy was the one. Yeah. So I think Georgia will be solid this year. The main lesson to learn is overestimate nobody. That is 100% true. Because we can look at this all day and say, oh, you know, I think Alabama's, you know, what does this matchup look like? How good is this team? If Alabama is capable of going out there and whipping up on Georgia, like they at least did in the first half, and then winning that game last year, and then losing the 2 opponents you're not supposed to, anybody on their schedule just about is a threat. So they've got to get that fixed. If they show that they've gotten that fixed, they're going to be dangerous, because I think they can beat a lot of these, you know, good teams on their schedule. And you can lose one, potentially even two, still make the college football playoff, still potentially make the SEC championship. So it would just depend on how it kind of all falls. Next question is from Bama Sports Fan. And he says, how do you see carries being split? Jam looks to be the RB1, but we have at least three other guys who look ready to contribute there as well. So, Mick, I mean, it's a question a lot of people are asking. I mean, the running backs, there's no like clear cut, like everybody assumes Jam's going to start, especially if Kalen DeBoer kind of approaches things in the same way that Nick Saban did, where it's like, if you're even remotely close from a talent standpoint, seniority is going to win out. Could be, Jam's a senior, so he does have that seniority factor along with Draylon Washington, but he's also a new arrival, so he's treated probably a little bit differently. But I mean, I don't know that Alabama has anybody that's like from a talent standpoint, it's just a clear cut RB1 way ahead of everybody. How do you see this being split? Maybe compared to what we've seen in the past from Kalen DeBoer's offenses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Jam's going to be in there a lot. I mean, because they love his versatility. I mean, they can throw him the ball. They like that. They throw the ball a lot. Sometimes they use short passes almost as runs, right? So him, and then I want like Washington to me is the other guy you're going to see a lot of, because they wouldn't have brought him in if they weren't planning on having him run the ball. Plus, he's got experience. Then you got that group of other guys like Hill and Riley and those guys. I mean, which one of those guys is going to step up and be the and every year it's like, I remember when Josh Jacobs was like, hey, he's a good guy, like 6 on the chart, and everybody's like, who? And then like they're like, well, I mean, like 3, okay. And then all of a sudden, like and I know it's a different offense, but then he just started to become one of those guys. That Kenyon Drake is a great example. Maybe he wasn't the number 1 guy on the depth chart, but man, I'll tell you what, they figured out a way to get him in there. And kind of take advantage of his unique skill set. I kind of wonder this from that same standpoint. You can't. You're right. You can't cover him on that wheel play as Georgia. But from that same, and I've been thinking about this, not to go to wide receivers, but just the taking advantage of a guy's versatility. Like maybe Jalen Mbakwe could be like kind of like a Kenyon Drake too, where you just take advantage of something that this guy can do to get him in the offense and kind of take advantage of him when we know we're not talking about Bach a lot. But, going back to the running backs, outside of knowing that Jam's going to be kind of the guy that we saw last year, I'm not really sure who the other guy is. I mean, I guess I would say Washington probably.
So what I did was I kind of went back at least since he's been an offensive coordinator, in major college football. And I looked at a lot of Kalen DeBoer's running back splits. And so like last year, Jam Miller and this is just percentage of running back carries, not percentage of total carries, took the quarterbacks out of it for a second. But as far as he got 145 carries out of 285 carries given to the running backs, which was 50.9%. So right at that 50% mark. Justice Haynes, 27.7%, for a total of just under 80% of the total running back carries went to those two guys. You go to 2023 at Washington. Dylan Johnson was responsible for 70.1% of Washington's carries just by himself. I mean, it was a wide gap. Clearly a one-man workhorse relative to everybody else, because the season before with Wayne Taliapapa, however you say it, and Cameron Davis, they combined for 74.8% of the running back carries. So that is just, only a few percentile above what Dylan Johnson did by himself the following season, with a 42.4% split and a 32.4% split. So you had like a two-headed monster there responsible for 3/4 of the carries amongst the running backs. Then you go to Fresno State when he was the head coach there. Ronnie Rivers and Jordan Mims, 51.4% for Rivers, 41.6% for Mims. That's a two-headed monster. 93, that is a lot. That is pretty much every running back carry went to one of those two guys pretty much that season. You go the year before, Ronnie Rivers, and this is the COVID year, so a much, not as many carries to be split, but Ronnie Rivers was the workhorse, 70.9%. Mims was under 20%, which is still, 19.9 is still respectable.
Right.
But then you go to like Indiana, it was a 52.2, 26.5 split. So kind of a two-headed monster. But, you always got that guy typically that's north. The running back one's always north of 50%. So you got to try to figure out, okay, who's that guy? Then you look at like the backup, the rotational, how many guys are they going deep? From what I've seen, outside of 2018, when you had Ronnie Rivers, when he was the offensive coordinator at Fresno State, you had Ronnie Rivers still, you had Jordan Mims, and then you had Josh Hokett. Hokett was responsible for 19.1% of the carries. Ronnie Rivers was 34.6, and Jordan Mims was just under 30. So it's like that was the only case that I've been able to find, at least going back since he's been, an offense coordinator at at a higher level of football, where he's had a three-headed monster. Everywhere else he's been, or head coach or offense coordinator, it's either been one guy or it's been two guys, including last season. Like if you remember, we were asking, okay, what does, what do we see from Richard Young? Like we're expecting Jam Miller and Justice Haynes to be the main two guys, but we were also saying like Richard Young's coming along. He's a former top 100 talent. It's very possible that he ends up being like kind of in that mix as well. It only ended up being two guys. Now, granted, you've had some dual threat guys mixed in there a little bit, but no one to the extent of Jalen Milroe. So they kind of had a three-headed rushing monster, but one of them was a quarterback, and he was by far and away the biggest ball carrier in Alabama's offense last year. So I start wondering, okay, a lot of that's going to be going to the passing game, but I guess there is room for a third. But just based off of what we've seen, nothing is really shown as far as evidence that it would be three. So that's where I'm having a hard time. Like, do you think they go with just two guys and it's like Jam Miller and Richard Young? Is it Jam Miller and Traylon Washington? Is it Jam Miller and obviously Daniel Hill is one that I think eventually could end up being one of the top two running backs in this offense if he continues to trend like he is. What do you think? What would you do if you were the offensive coordinator? Would you run it through multiple guys, or would you kind of shorten the rotation there a little bit?
I don't know. I think that you got to get a lot. You want to develop depth, because when guys get hurt, you want somebody else to be able to step up and play. And I thought Alabama always did a good job of that. Saban was in his offenses always seemed to have, like I said before, it just, unless circumstances dictated it, we didn't really have like one running back. The only reason that we did with Derrick Henry is because everyone else got hurt. Same thing with what was the guy's name that Brian Robinson. Yeah, same with him. Like everybody got hurt, and he started to kind of get all the carries. But I think for the most part, it's like, they're going to do it like they do in the NFL. You're gonna, at least one drive you're gonna have some of these other guys in, and then you realize, hey, they're pretty good. So I don't know that's, there's such a I could see it both ways. This coaching staff needs to win, right? But at the beginning of the season is a good chance to use these guys. Although Bama's schedule is so tough, it's not like you really have a lot of off weeks, when it comes to some of these matchups. It's like, because of the fact you're playing Florida State and Wisconsin, like two tough games, man. Two games that if they beat you, it is a major win for them. But I think that at least three. I think you got to use at least three.
And I think you can, based off of now here's the thing, the quarterback is still going to handle some carries, and it doesn't really matter who it is. Now, granted, Austin Mack probably the fewest of the three, but like Ty Simpson, he's a better scrambler than given credit for. He's going to take off and run some. It's not going to be 168 carries or whatever it was for Jalen Milroe. It's going to be nowhere close, but I could see him in the 75, anywhere from like the 70 to 90 range. I wouldn't be shocked at all. If it ends up being Keelan Russell, probably same thing, especially with him being younger. Like it's going to kind of be, hey, if it's not there, instead of, if I'm not really seeing it, just take off and run. That's kind of what young quarterbacks do when you have the ability to do it, even though Keelan Russell really wasn't that guy on the high school level. I think on the college level he could. But yeah, so I think you can make room for three, but it's a matter of which three is it and who's going to be the primary, because I think that third is going to be like kind of not necessarily a distant third, but a pretty distant third. So, I mean, someone, let's see. So Stephen Burton says that he thinks that Richard Young's going to move to the top of the list above Jam Miller. We've got, the Moon, which I already brought it up. I see Hill becoming RB2 early on, and then they immediately followed it up by saying Washington will not be in the top 3, meaning Draylon Washington. This is kind of, it feels like it could go in a number of different directions. I am really starting to think that Hill's going to end up being one of the top 3 guys, potentially one of the top 2 guys. The coaching staff likes Young, but he's really improved. So I would say 3 is the number. I think Jam is going to be the starter. I think he is going to handle probably just north of 50% of the workload. It is possible, maybe. Actually, I'll go down a little bit on that. I would say north of 40%. Whoever RB2 ends up being between Richard Young and Daniel Hill, they end up handling, 25. And then, RB3 is involved pretty consistently, but they're a distant third is kind of how I would split it up. Anything to add before we move on, Nick?
No, I think it's some good analysis.
All right. So the last question that we have from Lord Kalen DeBoer on Twitter: in the landscape of college football now, do you think coordinators like Wommack or Grubb would ever rather stay a coordinator in a championship caliber program rather than taking their shot at it being a head coach at a smaller school that will inevitably be scavenged for talent more than before?
Oh, you start with this one. I want to hear your thoughts.
Yes. That's what Wommack did. He left being a head coach to be a coordinator because of, if it's all about getting to the highest level, whether that be the NFL as a coordinator or whether it be like a college head coach. I don't think you're going to go from college coordinator to head coach, but one of those two things at a major program, it seems like going the offense coordinator at a really good school that's got a ton of talent where you can kind of be nationally recognized and get all sorts of credit, and you got plenty of toys to play with. Anything that you can, the creativity of some offensive coordinators, when you have unlimited resources at your disposal, like you've got tons of receivers with different styles that can all win. You got tight ends that can do some stuff. You got running backs that are deep and talented, a good offensive line where you can kind of do what you want to, a good, steady quarterback who can use his legs and his arm. It's like there's nothing that you can come up with that your offense isn't capable of executing. So that's where you get like the Steve Sarkisians, the Chip Kelly last year with Ohio State. Like there was just very few things that Ohio State was not capable of doing offensively. So anything that Chip Kelly could muster up, he could get his guys to execute. If you're at a smaller school where you have limited resources, the talent pool is not really there. Maybe you're really struggling as far as your offensive line, so you can't afford to do the long developing passing plays or passing concepts. It's like you really start to become limited. So I just think that is something that you're going to see from, even some people who are already smaller school head coaches. They're going to try, if they can, to move on and become a coordinator and then try to make that jump to a much bigger school rather than pretty much sticking around there at the bottom, and the transfer portal and the talent getting scavenged is something that I didn't even really address, which is part of the question, but that is also something that you're constantly dealing with, is the lack of resources from a funding standpoint. So you're getting some of your guys pillaged, you're having a hard time replacing them. You finally got some NFL talent or some better talent that can be competitive. A couple of them end up getting sniped and it completely changes the dynamic of your roster. Now, like I just said, you can't do what you wanted to do offensively because you don't have that piece anymore. Like these are things that they're all having to deal with. So yes, I would say you don't have to worry about Ryan Grubb or Kane Wommack leaving for a smaller job. Now, what's the smaller job? If Mississippi State came open, or if Washington State came calling for Ryan Grubb, which I think that was a thing at one time. I know they were talking to Jamarcus Shepard. Like that would maybe be something that you would maybe leave for. But yeah, I definitely think that I think Alabama's biggest threat of losing either one of these coordinators is to a head coaching job, a quality head coaching job on the college level, or potentially a coordinator job for maybe someone like Ryan Grubb getting another shot in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, keep your eyes open for this. Who would have thought that President Trump and Nick Saban being together at a commencement could end up resulting in an NIL deal where an executive order limits NIL. And then, if that happens, which I was reading about that today, maybe these smaller jobs become decent jobs again, right? Because if there were some restrictions there, I think we all want that. Maybe they level the playing field. So something to keep an eye on. But hey, great to have you guys on here. I want to tell you this. We're brought to you by Pearl River Resort over in Philadelphia, Mississippi. And that's an hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 and change from Birmingham. Can you imagine being there yesterday for the Kentucky Derby? I bet on some horses on the Derby and lost all of them, but it was fun watching. One of my horses came in second.
I had two. I did have the winner, and then I had.
You did?
Yeah. Well, and granted, I mean, it was, I was just seeing what other people were saying. I don't know nothing about. I was just seeing and doing some of the secondhand analysis, looking at, hey, does this sound good? Does that sound good? And just Sovereignty was one that I was looking at. What was the American not Heritage, American something? That was the other one that I was like, which one are we going with? We going with one or the other? And then Sovereignty ended up winning because I literally posted it 30 seconds, 2 minutes before the race.
Yeah,
but it was fun to watch for sure.
Muddy track. But anyway, you guys can go over to Philadelphia. Got the sports book over there, the Timeout Sports Lounge at Golden Moon Casino, Silver Star, Dancing Rabbit Golf Course. Another beautiful day to get out and hit the links, the Azaleas, the Oaks, 2 amazing golf courses are there. A part of that, Philip M. Steakhouse and the spa, the water park, all that. So you got everything you need over at Pearl River Resort. Clint, any final thoughts before we say goodbye to everyone on this Sunday? And thank you guys, by the way, like and subscribe, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in. We really do appreciate it. And the moon, you said you were here at 8:30, which was our original plan, but Mick almost cut his nose wide open, so we had to punt for about 30 minutes. We appreciate you hopping in, but also get over to covercrimson.com. I continue to put together some of the depth chart projections, and that's going to be coming out tomorrow. Yeah, I thought I was about to have to call 911 for you because
Shorty called 911.
It sounded way worse over text. I didn't know how much I used to. When you hear there's blood everywhere, nothing you can do.
It looks terrible. What am I going to do? Hey, and also, guys, catch Clint and all of us on covercrimson.com. $25 off the annual subscription. We appreciate you for being with us on there too. And we'll be following all this stuff. Transfer portal. It's closed, but you can still pull players out of it. So we'll see if Bama does that and more. So, appreciate you guys for being here, but have a great Sunday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Roll Tide.
To Pearl River Resort.